Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Rock Your Shine After You've Been Cracked Wide Open. This week, we've got a wonderful guest. I think this is going to be a very inspiring conversation from what I can tell so far. And and I hope I say your name right, we've got Madhurima Sappatti with us today. And you can correct me if that is wrong.
Yeah, it kind of goes like a wave. So Madhurima.
Well, it's beautiful. So, a little bit about you. I have with me today a freedom soul coach that helps multi passionate, ambitious dreamers manage their stress and prevent burnout so they can keep doing what they love without their own selves holding them back. She is on a mission to make stress management fun with the hope to create awareness around how you can do this on a daily basis. And part of the catalyst, you're going to really be talking to us today about your spiritual journey and what you're doing now as a result. But just to ground our readers in sort of the basis of your story is you lost your dad in 2018. He was quite young at 51 years old. You had been dealing with some anxiety, but as a result of his death, you really felt quite an exacerbation in some of those anxiety symptoms. And then you have a meditative practice and have had some epiphanies. So I just wanted to sort of set the stage for what brought us here today with your story. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm super excited.
I am excited too. I love that you call yourself a freedom soul coach. I think that is just such a beautiful title. Let's go back to your spiritual journey that you have been on and sort of what has
hmm
brought you here today for us to have this conversation. So, why don't you jump in to where you feel like makes sense in your own story of really sort of that catalyst in catapulting you forward to doing what you're doing today?
For sure. So, long story short or long story long?
Let's do the long story long.
Okay, let's go. Let's go. All right. So, pretty much since we were kids, my family, my dad, my mom have always held a very open space for us to explore pretty much every religion out there, pretty much all kinds of spiritual functionalities, all kinds of spiritual techniques that exist out there because we were pretty much open about all of these things. We had something called as chai time where we would sit and drink chai and basically talk about different things that happen spiritually, explore spiritual concepts about universe, us, dimensions, different realities, and all of those things. So pretty wacky for a teenager, but it was pretty cool to be honest. Then there was a time when, because of there was a lot of fake and negative media surrounding spirituality back when I was a teenager, especially in India, and as
So,
teenagers
so, so
do.
that's a good
Sorry.
point. You grew up in India.
Yes.
Are you still living in India or are you in the
Yes.
States? You're in
No,
India
no,
now.
I'm in India right now.
Okay, excellent. Okay, keep going.
Okay, okay, awesome. So back when I was a teenager, I just didn't want to be associated with that negative concept of spirituality. You know, as teenagers do, we try to fit in, we try to be socially acceptable and all of those things. And so I just didn't want to be associated. And I did step away from spirituality for a really long time. I did start to slowly get back into it when I was in university, when I was staying away from my family, and spirituality was something that was really beautiful. It was a part of home that I carried forward into a different town, new town. An introvert in a completely new town is sometimes not the best match energetically because I preferred staying home, but then I also missed my family and all of these things. So spirituality was something that was really powerful. Fast forward, my dad got cancer when I was in third year of my college, and
And
we did get sorry.
what were you studying in school?
So I was actually studying for hotel management, and I have had my fair share. Like I was preparing for medicine earlier, didn't get through because competition here in India is extremely high. So I lost my seat by a couple of marks. Fast forward, I did take a drop year, but then the same thing happened. Like just by a couple of marks, I was pushed back thousands of students, and I just felt like it wasn't the right thing for me to do. So I decided to go into hotel management. So I had a few options that I kept for my dad. I was like psychology, hotel management, literature. He was like, let's do hotel management because he was afraid that if I would go into psychology, I would lose my mind. And then look where we are. Look where we are right now. But then, yeah, I was studying for hotel management, and in the third year, so it was a 4 year course. In the third year of my college, I got to know that dad got cancer. It was the fourth stage of the cancer thing. So, but then he did take into treatments. He did good treatments. He got really well. Like in March of 2018, I got a call from home that, hey, everything's fine. Like it's gone. Like there's no more cancer in his body. We did all the tests. Everything's fine. I was like, yeah, amazing. Had a full on blowout crying session because I was like, yes, everything's fine.
And how long was this ordeal from the time that he was diagnosed till, and
I
then he
think,
went through cancer treatments, and then he was deemed cancer free, it sounds like. And what are we
I think it
talking, a
was an year.
year? A
Yeah, it
year?
was an year and a half-ish
And you were
at the
dealing with
most.
this while you were going to school, while you were at
Yeah.
university.
Yeah, I was at university, different town altogether. So I wasn't even at home. So in March, everything was fine. I had actually come back home, which I feel like is a blessing when I think about it, that I got to spend at least some time with him that wasn't him in extreme pain. Stayed here. So the timeline is really, if you think about it, it's really weird because I was here till 15th or 16th of March, if not till 20th of March. Went back to college 11th April. So that's literally half a month, 15 days time. 11th April, not 11th April. Yeah, 11th April. My mom, it was on my mom's birthday that mom told me that we have to go to the hospital because dad's not feeling well. 15th April, I got a call at 12 o'clock at night. And that was the day I was celebrating my best friend's and roommate's birthday. And I got a call. And I thought my mom was calling me to wish my roommate a happy birthday. But then she told me that the doctors had asked whether dad should be put on ventilator. And she was dealing with it all. God bless her soul, because she is such a strong woman. She was dealing with it all from 8 p.m. But she called me at 12 because she just didn't know what else to do. She was like, I don't know what to do. Everything's kind of happening way too fast. I don't know how to go about this. We did get the prognosis that dad had gotten cancer again, like it had come back, but it was growing really fast.
So
We
he,
were,
so, this is such a, God, I've heard this story so many times. He's
yeah,
cancer free. All of a sudden, he's not feeling good. He goes back, and the cancer has come back with a vengeance.
yeah.
And at that point, was he deemed terminal? I mean, what was there no hope
No,
at that point, or did he continue to go get treatment?
we did have a very minute chance, but then the thing is, because it was so fast and his body was crashing, basically, we didn't have enough time. So the doctor was kind of hoping that we reach a good point to get into the treatment part of things, like putting him into chemo and getting started with the chemo once again. But then it just went on way too quickly. So yeah, 15th of April, got a call, and my mom was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. She wanted me to come back. So in a shock, my friends booked the cab for me. They booked the airplane flight and all of those things for me. I didn't even know what was happening. I was just praying to everything that existed out there that, my mom was just calling me to tell me that it's bad, and not that he's actually already passed away, and that I was just like, she was just, smoothing the blow out for me. I don't know how I slept. I slept for like a couple of hours because I had a really early morning flight. My friends made me sleep. They were like, you have to sleep. But then I was just up. I just couldn't sleep. Went back, and yeah, throughout the cab ride, I was just calling mom. I was like, are you sure he's not dead? Are you sure he's not dead? Like, please tell me. Like, if it is, I genuinely don't mind. Just let me know if he is fine or not. And then I reached there in the morning. And yeah, I mean, by that time, thankfully, he had kind of recovered a bit. So I thought that everything was fine. I was like, it's fine. He's gonna be fine. But then the doctor pulled me out, told me that it's not actually looking very good. And we were just hoping, man, he went into so many surgeries and things like that. And then finally we got the doctor told us that he's not improving. Things are not going well. So you have an option to either put him on a ventilator or just we can just help him pass on smoothly.
So this
And
sounds like it all was very, very quick.
it was
Are we
so
talking weeks? Are we talking days?
it was it I'm telling you, right? Like March 20th or something, I had gotten that all clear
Call.
sign. Yeah, no, it was not March 20th. I think first week of March I got the all clear sign. I was like, yay. 11th April, dad's in hospital. We did get to know that 5th Aprilish time that things are not looking kind of good, and he didn't want to go back to the hospital. But then, I mean, you get it, right? Like if you've been in that space, you don't want to go back to the hospital. But then we did take him. 15th of April, that happened. I got pulled back. I got rushed back to the hospital. 24th of April, we lost him.
I mean, wow. Just
Yeah.
going from getting the call that he's cancer free to it's come back. And then the trauma in that, I mean, I feel like is twofold because you've gone from this pure elation that your father is cancer free to all of a sudden he's terminal. And
Yeah.
that's the part that feels so deeply heartbreaking is this joy that he's going to be fine to this sudden
Yeah.
decline. And so, all right. So now you're still a student, right? I mean, you're a student,
Yeah.
you are dealing with this traumatic event that has happened now to your family. And you said that you had a younger brother.
Mhm.
And your younger brother, was he still living at home with your mother? Was he young enough that he was still in
Yes.
high school? Okay. So now what
Correct.
happens? Do you go back to school? Do you stay home?
So we did get my teachers, bless their hearts. Like I had missed my finals because I was like my finals started the day my dad died. Imagine. So I did get thankfully an opportunity because I was a top student. I got the opportunity to give the exams later on. That hey, just come back after a couple of months, come back, give the exams, then you can go back home. I did get the opportunity. My teachers, my principal all told me that if you want to walk away with a diploma, you can do that. Right? Like you can walk away with a diploma now. You don't have to finish the final year of school. But then both my mom and me decided that we're gonna do it. I mean, I'm gonna push through till the end. So I did finish up my school while my university while my brother was finishing up his school. He was in 11th grade. So when it was the timeline is this. So when I finished my university, he finished his 12th grade. So yeah.
And your mother, I mean,
Oh, my mother. She is such a blessing for me. I can't even tell you, Susan. There are times when I am extremely lost and she's the one who's guiding me through it. Right. And the thing is, here in India, we don't have the concept of moving out. So I'm 26 years old. I'm still living with my mom. I've told her I'm stuck with you. You can't get rid of me. Right. Like you can't genuinely get rid of me. So I am stuck with her and she's my guiding light through a lot of difficult moments.
oh God, and I'm sure you're hers. I'm sure
Mm.
you're hers. To have you with her now that your dad has passed is going to be such a blessing for her as well. So let's pivot because you told me that
Mm.
you had some anxiety prior to your dad's death, but then
Mhm.
it really escalated after his death, which makes total
Yeah.
sense. But then you
Yeah.
had an epiphany during a meditation. Take us to this turning point. What happened?
Mhm. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, I had chronic depression. I was diagnosed with chronic depression before dad passed away. And afterwards, I just had health anxiety, separation anxiety, just this foreboding that anytime I try to do something, anytime I try to leave the home, something bad's going to happen. Thankfully, when I came back from the university, I was working in a company, had to quit because I had extreme burnout. And my mom was the one who actually pushed me. She was like, do it. Like, don't worry about this. Take care of yourself first. So
And
that
and
happened.
and sorry, I'm going to just interrupt every now and then just for clarity. So
Yeah.
you were in the hospitality industry, this job, right? Were you at a hotel? Is
Um,
that what you were doing, or where were you?
Not really. So I was actually working in an advertising firm in the digital marketing area. I had focused on marketing throughout my hotel management journey. I was actually working with my dad for a while as well. I was working in an advertising agency, and I was extremely burnt out. Like the toxic culture, it was just too much. There was no sense of boundaries. I was always present and logged in to work for my boss, and it had gotten very bad to a point that I was starting to kind of feel a bit psychotic, and I was just like, this is not me. This is really not me. And that was when I told my mom, and she was like, I get it. Like, she had been seeing me transition from a really mentally sound person to being in a space where I was slowly just irritable. I don't know how to say it.
Irritable, irritable.
Irritable, yeah. That word is so weird. Okay. I was irritable. I was angry. I was just in this very weird space, and I was like, I didn't know what was happening, because back in 2019 burnout was not a hyped up word as it is right now. So I was just like, something's wrong, I don't know what is wrong. But then I was going through panic attacks, anxiety attacks. After an year almost after dad passed away, that was the first time that I was starting to once again get this panic and anxiety attacks, and I was just like, I can't do this. I genuinely can't do this. So she was the one who actually pushed me, and she was the one who told me to quit. I was like, how can I quit? I'm the only, like, at that point of time, I was the only source of income. I was like, how can I do that? Like, doesn't make any sense. She's like, I don't care what sense it makes, you need to quit. So decided to quit, joined another company. And this was the other company that I joined. I was working in the solar industry, once again in the marketing department. And because it was a very on the side job, and the pandemic hit us and lockdown happened, we were basically in a space where we couldn't be on site. So that just meant that there was no business coming in. So I was just struggling to get business in with nothing happening after that point of time. So I decided to quit once again. So here are a few things happening. I'm mourning my dad's death. I have health anxiety, and there was so much negative media once again around pandemic. Like, oh my gosh, if you end up getting COVID, you're going to die, and no one is going to be around you when you're dying. Like, people will be basically just taken to the hospital. You die. End of
Yes,
story.
we
Right?
were globally, we were infused with fear.
Uh,
So people who even didn't have anxiety developed anxiety as
oh
a
yeah.
result of the pandemic, which makes total sense. We were all running around
Yeah.
in total fear that we were all going to die.
Oh
So
yeah.
I can really appreciate this, but these are catastrophic things. Like your father
Yeah.
passed, then you're trying to figure it out as this young person who's graduated and find your way. You're supporting your mother, I'm sure, emotionally, right? I mean, you're helping her get through her own grief. Then we have a global pandemic. So that's a lot on the shoulders of a young
Yeah.
of anyone. I won't even say of a young person, but it's true. It's just a lot to
Yeah.
carry. And you're trying to
Yeah.
find your way in the world as a young professional, right? And you're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. And now imagine, I'm also a really ambitious individual, have been since I was a kid. So the fact that I had to quit two jobs in the span of 6 months was like, I am not moving forward, I'm moving backwards. What the hell is happening here? So I was just very lost emotionally, mentally, physically. I just didn't know what I was doing. And oh my God, now that I think about it, we also had to leave our house and search for another house during this time. So the amount
Why?
of
What was that? Was that a financial thing that with your father gone? So your
nothing like
mother
that. Yeah.
was your
Sorry.
mother. So your mother was your mom a stay-at-home mom, or did she work in the
Sh-
workforce?
She was a stay-at-home mom, but then she was also, like, taking tuitions and doing all of those things on the side. So everyone was pulling in their part basically. So we all prefer and being in that equality space where we were all doing our own job to kind of create a wonderful household for ourselves. So we had to actually leave because the person's house that we were living in a rented house. We had to leave because they were planning on renovating and themselves shifting in. So a lot of shit was happening. I'm not even like, I'm sorry if swearing is not there's a lot
Now
of
you
shit was
can swear.
happening.
This isn't a this isn't a dumb
Okay,
podcast.
yeah. So I mean, things were basically just chaotic, And I love chaos, but that was not the kind of chaos I loved. And it was at that point of time that I was already practicing spirituality a bit more after dad passed away, but then I just needed to settle down and figure out what I wanted to do. And even back then, when I had no idea what coaching was, I was like, I just need to have a conversation with myself, right? Like I basically took myself through a self coaching scenario, but then I sat down, closed my eyes, relaxed myself. There is this really wonderful music that I love to listen, that my dad loved to listen as well. So put on that music and I just centered myself. In this moment, when I was completely within me, I asked a question. I often held conversations with my dad. I just imagined him speaking to me and the universe. So I was like, what am I doing here? Like, why am I here? And in that moment of clarity, the first word that came to my mind was story. You're a story. It's like, what does that mean? And then I got the response that the universe is a very vast thing, right? You are the universe is a very vast thing. And in its vastness, it forgets, like it is all knowing, but it also forgets. It also is not aware of the details of those tiny, tiny stories, of those tiny things that's happening, because it's all knowing. It knows everything. And so it knows nothing. You get the concept of that, right? So it knows everything, so it knows nothing. And it's bored. It's bored out of its mind. So what the universe does is, because it is bored, it asks for volunteers. It's like, who wants to go get a story for me? From the time that if you say yes, the universe is like, okay, this is very difficult for me, but I'm going to part with you so that you can live a life, live a story, and come back and share that story. So I asked, is that all we are? Are we just stories for the big thing that is all knowing, all encompassing? Like, yes. Then I was like, I sat with it for a really long time. Like, okay, I'm a story, I'm a story, I'm a story. And when I came out of the meditation, that was still ringing. I'm a story, I'm a story, I'm a story. Like, if I'm a story, I'm going to be the best story that ever was. Right? The universe sacrificed a part of itself so that I could live a story here right now. So it's a both kind of thing, right? Like the universe is sad to let me go. I am sad to let go, but then we are both playing our own roles. And roles is very important, I think, in my life. As I say this during your podcast, I'm realizing we are all playing our own roles. So I am playing my role to write a extremely magnificent story. Like if I go back and tell the story to the universe, you better believe it's going to be a blockbuster. Like people are going to be cheering the heck out of me, like, oh my gosh, we were waiting for a story like this. That's my, and it was to write a story.
So I love this, and I'm going to pause here because where we share that belief is that, I see us as perfect reflections of creation, and we're here to create, and we are here to create our story. Exactly what you just said, and I think that when we embrace the true understanding that we're the author of our own story and we are not the victim in our life or in our life circumstance, it's a very different way to look at life, right? We are not at the mercy of it. We actually hold the pen to our own fabulous story why we're here. So I love the language that you're using because I'm a writer too, and I think of everything in story, and which is why I love the podcast, because I love to hear people's, as you call it, the hero's journey. I'd like to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring this ad. Hey guys, I want to take a minute to offer an opportunity for those of you who've been searching for a mental health therapist and haven't had any luck getting callbacks. I know it's challenging to find help, so I've partnered with BetterHelp. They are the world's largest therapy service, and they are 100% online. With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues. To get started, you just answer a few questions about your needs and preferences in therapy. That way, BetterHelp can match you with the right therapist from their network. Then you can talk to your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether it's via text, chat, phone, or video call. You can message a therapist at any time and schedule live sessions when it's convenient for you. If your therapist isn't the right fit for any reason, you can switch to a new therapist at no additional charge. With BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism and quality you'd expect from in-office therapy, but with a therapist who is custom-picked for you. More scheduling flexibility at a more affordable price. Get 10% off right now on your first month at betterhelp.com/rock your shine. That's betterhelp.com/rock your shine. Now back to our episode. So tell us where you are in the writing of this story, because you went to school for hotel management. You decided not to go for psychology, and yet here you've landed in the land of coaching, which is a very close sibling to psychology, right?
Yeah, I mean, what are the odds?
All right. So you're in this deep meditation. You ask the universe a question. The universe gives you the answer that you're here to write your story. What happens next? How do you decide? I'm imagining you probably went off and enrolled in some sort of a coaching course. I'm guessing. I don't know if that's true or not. So tell us what happened from the meditation.
I love what you're asking. And the thing is, it's one thing to recognize that you're a story. It's another thing to write that story. And so I was in a very deep process of healing myself and unlearning a lot of the things. Like, I was used to playing small. And then when this thing resonated and landed for me that I am a story, I knew that I had to play it big. And I'm just starting to. I genuinely am just starting to play it big, because it took me time to unlearn that, oh, I can play big. I can do this. All those limiting beliefs, all those mindset blocks that existed. So things didn't just like magically start to happen. And then all of that, there were a lot of dips, a lot of obstacles. But then it was at this point that was actually introduced to coaching, because a lot of my inner circle members were getting into coaching. And I was like, intriguing. What is this all about? Got into it. And then I never really came out. I just went down that rabbit hole and never really came out. So my earlier mission was to help people reconnect with themselves, because I imagined a lot of people were just as lost as I was towards the end of 2020. Pandemic, big thing happened. We were then living in the after effects and uncertainty of life. And so I wanted to support people with it. And I did enroll in a 5-day challenge, which helped me open up a lot of doors and understanding for myself of what I wanted to do in the coaching world. I started coaching, started learning. Yeah.
So you could hear me asking the question. When you say it was a 5-day challenge, what was that through? How did that happen? What do you mean? Talk to us a little bit about that.
For sure. So it was one of my coach friends had actually posted about this another coach, Preston Smiles. If you guys want to check him out, he's really amazing. And I was just intrigued by the message he was sharing. And I was like, let me join this 5-day challenge so that I have a better understanding of what I wanted to do. It was then, and I'm pretty sure you know this, the yes and question of yes and what else. And so I was like, okay, I'm helping people reconnect with themselves and all of these things. And then I shared this with my mentor, who was also a spiritual individual, and it was like, amazing, what else? And I love that he asked me that question, because I knew that even though we have had just a few conversations, he could see me in my potential. And so I was like, by that point, thankfully, I had known what burnout was. I was like, I'm going to bring that in. I am going to bring in spirituality and burnout, because they were both similar in the fact that they were very individualistic. So spirituality is a very unique experience for every individual. So you might love being spiritual by gardening, right? Like, gardening is what spirituality means. For me, it is listening to myself, having conversations with myself, listening to music, dancing in the middle of the night. Everyone experiences spirituality differently. We ourselves experience spirituality differently at different points of time in our life. And burnout is pretty much same, because as I learned more about burnout is nothing but stress that hasn't been managed properly over a long duration of time, right? So that's all it is. But then when you break down stress, it's very individualistic once again. What could potentially stress me out would be your zone of genius. You would be out there figuring it out, making shit happen, and I would be out here melting into a puddle because I'm like, I don't know what is happening. Like, what is all of these things happening? Where do I put this? Where do I put this? And I'm like, gosh, here you go. I already did it for you. I'm like, so stress is very individualistic, and burnout and spirituality is very individualistic. So I decided to bring that together. And yeah, here we are. I'm helping people manage their stress and prevent burnout so that they could do all the things they love doing.
Well, that's really beautiful. So I didn't hear you say, though, the coach that offered the 5-day challenge. We can put it in the show notes because I'm sure people are going to ask, who is that? Who is the
Yeah.
coach's name?
Yeah. So it was Preston Smiles.
Preston, Preston, Smiles, as in
Yes.
smile.
Smile.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. We'll put that in the show notes. Okay, so you stumbled on this new vocation of coaching, and you have
Mm-hmm.
called yourself a freedom soul coach, as I said earlier, which is just so beautiful. And it sounds like it is that intersection between helping people to discover what lights them up. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Kind of, yeah. We rediscovered people's passion. We rediscovered a lot of things that ignite them, because I feel like when burnout happens, a lot of people think that everything is burnt to a crisp internally. But I believe that there are a few embers that are still burning, and you just need to fan it right so that you can once again reignite your fuel of passion. So yeah.
Yeah, and I want to say, I think I want to put some more meat around the bones of how I think about burnout, because you've used a lot of terminology today that I think means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, like
Mm-hmm.
spirituality, if people consider themselves, if they have some sort of spiritual practice, as you said, a refueling, what lights us up, whether it's passion, I mean, whether it's gardening, dancing, meditating, whatever it may be. It's our time that we get to refuel ourselves, right? And really attend to our own internal garden, if you will. And I think sometimes with burnout, when we can go and go and go, and we are actually not spending time with self, we are not listening to self, we are just on fast forward. And then we find ourselves at the end of that race feeling exhausted, either ill, right? And that can be a physical illness, it can be mental fatigue, it can show up and manifest in lots of different ways. And I think it's always an opportunity that when it's an indicator to slow down and to attend to your own heart, right? Going back
I
sort of
love that.
kind of going full circle of what fills us up, because I think that in this crazy world, we can be so bogged down with obligation, things that we must do, whether it's school or work, raising children. I mean, there are a million different things that take our time and energy. And I often hear with clients I work with, well, I don't have time to do X, Y, and Z, whatever that is, go for a run, workout, garden, it doesn't matter what it is. And we've all heard the analogy on a plane, put your air mask on first, right? We hear the same cliches over and over and over, but what does that actually look like in our day to day when we are all, we jump out of bed and we're running full sprint? And it is a fair question. How do we find or make or create the time to be still, even if it's for 10 minutes, because it's in the stillness is the only time that we can actually hear the calling of our own heart. You had an epiphany during meditation, but we can't have those internal dialogues if we don't make the space for it. It's just impossible. You can't, because you're running, you're in head, right? Epiphanies
Mm.
come in the heart. And so my question to you after that that very long speech is, what are some of the things that you do with your clients to help them to connect to that voice, that deepest part, that stirring, that soul, whatever people want to call it? I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
No, that is a really wonderful question. I love you for it. I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to self exploration. right? And it doesn't, I think a lot of people make it out to be this really big thing that is going to be extremely time consuming, when in reality you could be doing this at any point of time, as long as here is clear, right? Your head is clear. What do I mean by that? So this might sound really stupid, but hear me out, stay with me, you guys. Most of my self coaching conversations happen when I'm cleaning the house. I'm not even kidding. Like, I know that cleaning the house, like just mopping and sweeping and all of these things, because we all play our roles. Once again, the word roles come up. We are all doing our own part in making this a powerful and a household where we can all show up in our entire potential. When I'm doing sweeping, when I am mopping the house, I don't need to use my brain, right? I can do that on autopilot. That means that my head is completely blank, which is the best time to explore. So I invite people, and you don't even have to do this and make this a really big thing. It's just say hi. Start with hi. Start with just, if you need to settle down, sit down and just say hi to yourself. Do that. Have a conversation, because the thing is, and oh my gosh, I love this metaphor, and it comes from a song. Is It's called First Love by Suga from BTS. And there is a line in which he says that I have played the piano for a really long time, but I stepped away from it. But every time I come back to play the piano, even to this date, no matter how long it has been, the piano opens up its arms and welcomes me, no matter. And it's the same thing with our inner self, with our inner child. Our soul is constantly speaking to us. We have
And
learned.
they desperately want us to slow down and listen.
Oh my gosh, definitely. And but they don't care. Like, if we listen, if we don't listen, it's always speaking. We have been conditioned to not listen to it. So the very first thing, if you want to reconnect with yourself, is to start having conversations with yourself, however you seem fit. Whether it is by dancing, like you're dancing to a song that you used to dance to when you were a kid. You're listening to a song that brings out that nostalgic memories for you. When you're doing that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I loved this song as a kid. And your voice is, I know, why did we stop dancing? Right? And that's when it happens. And one of my favorite things to, whenever I have conversations with my clients around this, I always tell them, take yourself out on a date and don't start with the existential questions. Like, if you go out on a date with someone that maybe you swiped right on Tinder, they swiped right, you're going out on a date, you don't start with, what do you think life is? No, you start with, hi, hello, how are you doing? What are your hobbies? What do you like to eat? What do you like to drink? And then you start to inculcate those things into our daily life. Like, oh, I love to eat pasta. If you take yourself out on a date and you're like, oh, like just chilling out in your room, low lights, watching your favorite movie, and you're like, what do you want to eat right now? You ask yourself that question, and your inner voice is like, I would kill for some pasta right now. Let's make pasta. Right? It's that easy. When you start having those conversations, but you're not just having those conversations, you're actually taking action on it. That's when that relationship starts to remend. You can't just jump in. Like, even though your inner child, even though your soul is going to welcome you with open arms, you have been living in a pretty toxic relationship with it so far. You only ask it questions when you need help. If this was a real life relationship, you're just showing up when you need support and disappearing for the rest of the time, ignoring it for the rest of the time. That's not how relationships work. That's not going to be a wonderful relationship. Even though this person is always going to show up for you, is that really how you would like to move forward? If not, then you need to restart from the basics. You need to be like, okay, let's end that, let's restart. And by going on a date, by asking yourself, what do you want, what do you need? Oh, I would love to go for a run, I would love to watch the stars tonight, I would love to play with the pets, I would love to drink our favorite wine, I would love to drink our favorite childhood beverage like hot chocolate or something with extra whipped cream on top. I would love to jump into that puddle created by the rain right now. I would love to eat our favorite ice cream. I would love to read our favorite comic books. All of these tiny things, when you hear those whispers, you don't just ignore them again. You start to act on it. And when you do, your soul knows that, okay, this seems like she wants to build that relationship now. And she's serious about building that relationship. that's when you start to slowly develop, right? It's not that when you are in a relationship, you never ask those existential questions. You never have conversations regarding what is life and what is this and what is that and what is the role we are playing. We do that, but then you don't do that right off the bat. You build that relationship to a point where you can have that conversation and not feel guilty about, oh my gosh, I'm taking once again. You're having conversations, you're creating that beautiful space. So I think I speak a lot, Susan, I'm so sorry, but
No, this
uh,
is great.
yeah, but that's basically it. You go out on a first date with yourself, you start having conversations with yourself, and you start showing up for what you're hearing, for what your soul is telling you. Start showing up for it.
Yeah, and I can already hear some of my listeners asking questions. And I think that, there are people certainly that I've worked with and also people that I talk with that aren't even sure what lights them up, right? Because their life is so consumed by obligation, as I was saying earlier, just so many things that have to get done in a day. And,
Mm-hmm.
so something that I offer to people is remember what lit you up as a child. And you had mentioned
I
something about being a child that, because when we were children, we only engaged, unless we grew up in, I know that every childhood certainly was not ideal, right? And children have grown up in some pretty horrific circumstances. But for those of us who had relatively normal childhood, that those can give us an inkling of the things that would bring us joy. What did
yeah.
we enjoy when we were a kid or as a teenager? And then the other to get us tapping into our soul voice. I love bringing ourselves on a date. I think that is beautiful. And also something called automatic writing, where even for
Mm.
people who don't like to meditate, you can ask yourself a question and just start writing. And I always say, time it, keep it short at first, 10 minutes. You might ask yourself a question and then you just write and you don't lift your pen from the paper. And if you don't know what to write, you just say, I don't know what to write. It's an exercise that we as writers use too. If we're writing
Mm.
and feel like we've got writer's block, we sort of can query and ask questions. And so automatic writing can really open up a channel that deeper knowing, if you will.
Mm. Yeah, and don't be afraid of silence. I think I'd just like to add that, like, don't be afraid
Yes.
of silence when you're first starting out, because you can't expect a really powerful conversation right off the bat. Remember that you ignored your inner voice for a really long time. So be comfortable with that silence. Just let your inner self, your soul know that it's okay. If you don't have an answer for me right now, that's fine. I'm not
Yes.
pushing you for it.
And
So
don't
yeah.
worry too, because the other question is, well, how do I know if it's my soul or my mind? Right? I always get
Mm.
that question. How do I know? How can I differentiate between what is coming from soul intuition and what is coming from head? And what I say, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Just start being comfortable with what you're saying in the silence, even if it's walking meditation, where you're
Oh
just,
yeah.
we all hear, right? You got to stay in the moment. Well, what does that mean? Bringing yourself back to the awareness of right here and now. Instead of getting lost in what happened yesterday, instead of getting afraid about what's going to happen tomorrow. And our brain loves to wander. It's just, that's, I mean, that's why true yogis talk about, meditative practice. It takes a long time to train the brain, pretty much, because that's what meditation is. You're just trying to train your brain. And so, but there are many people that are never going to sit down and they're not never going to get into meditation. So I really love to expand the idea of what it means to meditate. And really, meditation can be when you're doing the dishes, to be aware of the water that are running over your hands. It's being in the here and now. And that is
Mm.
and that is when our soul has that opportunity to chat with us. What's coming
Yeah.
up? Don't worry about it. Just be aware of right here,
Yeah.
right now.
I love that.
Yeah. So I can't believe how fast our time has gone by.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have a coaching practice now, right? All right.
Yes, that's right.
Before we jump into where people can find you, is there anything else I've got two more questions that I always end with, but is there anything, because I felt like this conversation flew by, is there anything, I guess my question is the epiphanies that have come about since your father's passing. is there anything that you want to share from your own grief journey that I haven't asked you? Because it seems like there's been lots of awakenings that you've had
A
since the
lot of
past.
them.
Yeah. So is there anything else that you would like to share with us that I haven't asked you about?
I think there are two things that I'd like to share. The first is when we talk about the story, when we talk about writing our own story, and we were talking about this earlier, Susan, there is something called as the hero's journey by Joseph Campbell. You guys can check it out.
The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell. Yes,
Yes,
I highly
yes,
recommend as well. Mhm.
yeah. So remember that we are all writing our story, and hurrah to that. Write your own story. Remember that you are your own creator of the story, right? You are the one writing the story. But then also don't be afraid to show up in other people's story as the side character, as the mentor, as the person who's like, hey, what do you need? Oh, I need something like this. If you have the tools necessary that can help someone in their own journey, show up, share that tool, and step aside. Don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to support other people in their own journey, in their own hero's journey, because you never know. This is something that's really powerful. You never know how much impact your words have. This might be something very regular to you, but it might be life changing for someone. So don't be afraid to share your message. Don't be afraid to show up and support other people in their stories. But remember not to take over. Never take over. You are writing your own story, be in control of that, be in charge of that, but never take over someone else's story and be like, you should be doing this, unless they ask you for support. And once again, you are just the supporting character, never the lead in their story. So that is one thing that I'd like to share. The second thing that's coming up for me is don't be afraid of staying in the past or staying in the future. While being present is really powerful, I think by default, because we put so much emphasis on being present, we ignore the self that needs to be in the past to heal from it, that needs to be in the future to prepare for it, to come back in the present. So don't be afraid to step into the past, step into the future. But remember, you're just stepping in. You are not in the past, you're not in the future, you're just stepping in. You're just, if you've ever played that game in the arcade where you're dancing on those steps, you're just stepping on that step and coming back to yourself. Doing this is something that I feel like is really powerful because you're not ignoring your inner self. You are staying there, you're honoring whatever needs to show up, but then you're also remembering that I am here now. I have full control of stepping back into where I am in the present right now. So honor both your past and your future, but remember that you're in the present and be here. You're doing great stuff. I believe in you. Random stranger on the internet who is listening to Susan's podcast, I believe in you. You got this. Let's go.
That's wonderful. All right, last two questions. Answer this for me. What does self-love mean to you?
Self-love means exploration for me. I am always rediscovering different ways to love myself, and it's play. If that makes sense,
It's
always,
play. Is that what you said?
yeah,
It's
it's play.
play.
Yeah,
Oh, I
it's
love that.
play.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
it's
play.
playing around. It's figuring out, do I like this toy? Do I not like this toy? What do I want to do with this? What do I do? It's play.
I love
It's
that.
playtime. You're a kid in the sandbox and you're figuring out what works best.
And finish this sentence for me. Hope is
Power. Hope is power.
hope is
I
power.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is the one thing that if you remember that you have hope, if you hope for better things to come, if you hope, things are going to move forward, irrespective of how much fear shows up in your future or in your past. Hope is the guiding light a lot of
Mm.
times. So hold on to that. Hold on to hope.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that. And where can people find you?
Yes, I am on a lot of different platforms, and Susan is definitely going to link all of those in the podcast
Yes,
description.
I
But
will. Yes,
yeah,
they will all be in the show notes. But
yes.
you do have a website?
I do have a website. I am present on pretty much all the social media accounts there are. But the best place to reach out to me and to have a conversation with me would be Instagram. So Madhurima underscore freedom soul coach. That's where I exist.
Okay, perfect. And as I said, I know that that is hard to spell out, you guys. So we will have her links in the show notes. And I just want to thank you so much for coming here with all of your enthusiasm. It is such a breath of fresh air. I could feel your energy through the computer, I swear. And I know you make me want to go dance. And I want to thank you for taking the time and also just my heart goes out to you too for losing your
Thank you so
dad.
much.
And I want to thank all of my listeners, and I hope you guys are going to take some nuggets with you today. And I hope this gave you a little, just a little inspiration that
Little
you
bit of hope,
are
little bit of sunshine.
a little bit of sunshine and that you are the author of your own story. So I love you guys, and we'll see you here next week. Bye for now.